led the movement was so intense that the British had to bow before it and declare that, okay, what we called as a settled fact. In fact, the then Viceroy, Lord Curzon, once when he was challenged by the Congress, he told the Congress leaders that, no, whatever you want to do, you do it, but it's a settled fact. Partition of Bengal is a settled fact. What was declared as a settled fact could be unsettled by the movement of the people. Bengal was united once again. We defeated the designs of the British to not just divide a province. It was not about dividing a province. It was an attempt to create a rift between the two communities. It was successfully defeated in just 6 years. Fast forward by 3.5 decades. In 1940, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, the leader of Muslim League, declares that we want Pakistan on the banks of River Ravi in Lahore. At the Muslim League convention, he declares that we want partition of India, we want Pakistan. 7 years later, Pakistan was achieved. The question that this book raises and actually discusses is, as Madam Sheila Priyaji rightly mentioned, when just one province was divided, the whole country stood up. It had to be undone by the Britishers who wanted to divide Bengal, could not divide Bengal. In 3 decades, when the whole country was getting divided, why could we not stop it? This book talks about that history of those 3.5 decades. A very interesting, very painful, and very instructive history. So it is that history of these two partitions. Second, it is the story of two leaders. One who led India's freedom struggle, Gandhiji. One who led the campaign for partitioning of India, Jinnah. They are not equals. When I say two leaders, don't mistake me that I am equating Jinnah with Gandhi or Gandhi with Jinnah. No comparison. Jinnah is a dwarf in front of Gandhiji. He is a pygmy. But for the sake of understanding that historical process, I am mentioning about these two leaders. This book is about the story of those two leaders also. Jinnah entered Indian politics quite early. In fact, Jinnah and Gandhi share a few common things. Both hail from the same state, Gujarat, also same region, Kathiawad. So both were Gujaratis. Both studied law. Both were barristers. Both acquired their barrister degree in London. Both were London educated. Both served in India. Both started their politics in Congress. Jinnah also started his politics in Congress. Gandhi continued in politics, but Jinnah left Congress in the middle to join Muslim League. But their comparison or their commonalities end there. The rest of it is all about their differences. Jinnah joined Congress in 1904, inspired by Congress' desire for a constitutional government in India. He became a follower of Gopalakrishna Gokhale, who incidentally was also a guru of Gandhi. In 1906, when Muslim League was created, one of those very first leaders to say that very dangerous thing is happening in India, we should reject it, was Jinnah. Jinnah was opposed to the creation of Muslim League. Jinnah in 1906, when Congress Adhiveshan, Congress conference happened, in that conference, Jinnah in his speech asks the Muslim League leaders like Aga Khan, who are you? Who gave you the right to claim that you are representatives of Indian Muslims? You are not the representatives of Indian Muslims. That was Jinnah. Started off as a staunch nationalist, a follower of Gokhale, a secretary to senior Congress leaders. While Muslim League was trying to take Muslims away from the nationalist movement, independence movement, Jinnah was at work to bring League back to Congress. In 1916, there was a joint conference of Congress and League at Lucknow. For the first time, Muslim League agreed to attend or join Congress in a common conference. That was made possible by Jinnah. Jinnah was against separate electorates. Jinnah was against Muslim politics. He was against religion and politics to be mixed up. Jinnah was for united India. This part of Jinnah is quite surprising. In fact, when Muslim League and Congress got together at Lucknow, it was deemed a great success by the Congress leadership also. In fact, Lokmanya Tilak, one of the tallest leaders of those times, he openly announced from the podium that luck now at Lucknow. If you split Lucknow into two words, luck and now. Now luck has laughed on us because Muslim League has joined us. That was the kind of jubilation, that was the kind of sentiment that was there in those days. Who was instrumental for that was Jinnah. Same Jinnah left Congress in 1920. Became active in Muslim League. In 1935, he decided that he should play Muslim politics. Same Jinnah who once opposed Gandhi's mixing up of Hindu vocabulary. He took objection to it. He became the champion of Muslim politics in 1935. He went on to become the campaigner for partition of India, ultimately achieved partition also. The other person, Gandhi, started at the different end. Gandhi came to India in 1915. When he came to India, he was coming with a lot of experience behind him in South Africa. He led a big campaign against the colonialists in South Africa. There, Hindus and Muslims, both immigrants, together joined in his movement. So he came back with this view that Hindu-Muslim unity is the precondition for India to secure its independence. So when he arrived in India, he openly told that Hindu-Muslim unity first, then freedom. So he was ready to make any compromise for that, so that the two communities could come together. In fact, a very interesting thing happens when the very first month of his visit. The Gujarati Samaj in Mumbai hosts a reception for Gandhi. Because Gandhi was a great Gujarati leader, so they host a reception. That reception was to be chaired by Jinnah. Jinnah being a fellow Gujarati. Gandhi, when he got to know about this, he was so thrilled. Gandhi says that I'm so happy today that a Muslim is chairing my session. Because Gandhi had it in his mind that Muslims should come, then only we get independence. So he was so happy. But it's such a very travesty that in that very first meeting, the first seeds of discord between these two Gujaratis were sown. What happened was, when Jinnah rose to speak, Jinnah being a thoroughly anglicized person, he started speaking in English. Gandhi interrupted him, taunted him, "You are a Gujarati, why are you speaking in English?" Jinnah did not react. Jinnah continued to speak, completed his speech in English only, but he was a hurt man. Jinnah was a very egotistic person. His ego was hurt. So that day probably he decided that I cannot work with him, with Gandhi. Then in 1919, a Khilafat movement came. Gandhi decided that in order to bring Muslims to Congress, the best way is to support Khilafat. Now, Khilafat had nothing to do with India. Forget about India's independence movement, it had nothing to do with India. Khilafat was about the Sultan of Turkey. He was dethroned by people of Turkey after the First World War. Some Muslim leaders said that he is the leader of entire Muslims of the whole world. So he should be restored, Khalifa should be restored. Gandhi thought that if I champion that cause, Muslims will be happy, they will join Congress movement. You know who was staunchly opposed to it? It was Jinnah. Jinnah said it is madness. First of all, Khalifa, the Turkish Sultan, is not really the supreme leader of all Muslims. It's a misnomer, it's a myth. Secondly, I am totally opposed to this mixing of some religious issue of Khilafat, Khalifa, with India's independence movement. On that issue, 1920, Jinnah resigned from Congress and went away from Congress. But Gandhi believed in that we have to do something to ensure that Muslim League doesn't go away and start opposing Congress. We have to keep them with us. So Khilafat was the first compromise he decided to make. Before becoming anything in Congress, not many people know about this. Gandhi did not have any role in Congress until 1920. But in 1919, he was elected as the president of the Khilafat Committee. The first public office that was held by Gandhi in India was president of Khilafat Committee. So the first compromise was made in the name of Khilafat, because Gandhi sincerely believed that we have to do something to bring Muslim League along with us. That compromise, which Jinnah very stoutly opposed and finally left Congress also, became a kind of a practice in Congress afterwards. So from 1919 to 1938, if you see the 20-year period, during which time Gandhi was the supreme leader of Congress, compromise after compromise was being effected by Congress. First, they agreed to leave Vande Mataram, the song that we just now heard. It used to be sung in every Congress session. As I said, that Vande Mataram song was responsible for undoing Bengal's partition. It was on that one inspiration, of that song's inspiration, that whole country stood up against the British divisive operations. But in 1923, because the then Muslim League leadership, which became a part of Congress also, Maulana Muhammad Ali, who used to be a very good friend of Gandhi, he said that I don't want this. Congress agreed. Okay, if it is objectionable to you, we will also do one thing. We will also have Sare Jahan Se Acha Hindustan Hamara, written by Muhammad Iqbal, also sung at the Congress sessions. After 15 years, in 1937, Congress passed a resolution saying that Muslims are objecting to it, Vande Mataram, so we will cut it. Now the last three stanzas that those children sang, Swambhi Durga, Dasha Praharana Dharani, etc., etc. Since it is objectionable to Muslims, we will cut it. National song was cut in 1937, nation was cut 10 years later. Compromise with language. Muslim League leaders like Muhammad Ali said, no, Hindi should not be used because Hindi is the language of Hindus. So Congress said, all right, if you have objection, we will create a hybrid language called Hindustani. What is hybrid language? Like, Congress started rewriting books in Hindustani. Badshah Ram, Begum Sita, Maulvi Vasistha. Because, otherwise, if pure Hindi you should not use. Even on national flag, the flag committee headed by eminent people, which included Jawaharlal Nehru, which included Vallabhbhai Patel, which included Maulana Azad. They all unanimously approved saffron flag as the national flag. It was in 1931. Flag committee officially appointed, submitted the report. The report is available, saffron flag. But Gandhi said, no, the Muslims will object. Let us have the tricolor. One color for Muslims, one color for Christians, one color for Hindus. But later someone said, yeah, how can you have a flag on religious lines? It will be absurd. Then a new interpretation was given. No. Saffron is for sacrifice, green is for prosperity, white is for peace. So we went on compromising. The final compromise was separate electorates. Like if Chennai is one parliament seat, there will be a general constituency. Here anybody can contest in the election from any party. But in Chennai there will be a Muslim constituency also, where only Muslims can contest and Muslims can vote. Separate constituencies were created. Congress under Gandhi had hoped that these compromises would bring Muslim League closer to Congress. But what actually happened was, these compromises had actually further strengthened Muslim League. You went on making compromise after compromise. The rates went up, the stakes went up. Finally, Muslim League became such a big force that it could not be. Finally, they declared that no, nothing short of a division of India. When that happened, to give his credit to Gandhi, Gandhi realized that probably his starting point was wrong. So after 1940, Gandhi's singular effort was to keep India united. It should not be divided. So in that effort, he went to the extent of declaring that I can keep Hindu-Muslim unity issue pending. It can wait. I'm in no hurry anymore. I thought that is the first requirement, but now I realize that it can wait. I want a united India free from the British. But it was too late by then. Finally, when partition was decided, Gandhi tries his luck for the last time by going to Mountbatten and tells Mountbatten that please do one thing. Tell Jinnah that let him take the entire country. Why only Pakistan? Why only a part of it? Take entire country but keep it united. Mountbatten was taken aback. Mountbatten first says, okay, I'm not going to ask you how Nehru will react. That is something different that you will manage. But what do you think? What will Jinnah say? Gandhi says, oh, I know, Jinnah will say, this is wily Gandhi. This is mischievous Gandhi. What he is trying to do is, first, he will tell me that take the whole country, you become the Prime Minister of United India, let the British go. Once you leave, he will kick me out. So I don't trust this man, so I want my Pakistan. This was Gandhi. Jinnah started on a unity of India, United India wicket, became a separatist, splittist. Gandhi started on the wicket that no, Hindu-Muslim unity first, ended up begging for India's unity. Sadly, Jinnah won. This story is about that tragedy. How this appeasement, compromise, converting freedom movement into a bargain had led to ultimately the strengthening of Muslim League and partition of India. Finally, the two lessons that this book talks about are, number one, never compromise with vociferous separatist forces. Any amount of compromise, appeasement that you do will be a price that you are paying. That is not going to get you any dividends. That will only strengthen those forces. So never compromise with separatist, vociferous forces. This is one important lesson that this whole saga tells us. The second important lesson is country's unity calls for greatest sacrifices. Country's integrity, unity, oneness, it calls for people to be ready to die for it. You know, when Jinnah declared that India should be partitioned in 1940, Gandhi's instant reaction, immediate reaction was, vivisect me before vivisecting this nation. You first cut me into pieces, then you can cut India into two parts. This was Gandhi in 1940. In 1947, when partition was final, it was decided, and June 3rd plan it is called, on which the signatures were made. Somebody asked Gandhi, what happened? You said you will die if India is divided. What happened? Gandhi gives a very interesting answer. He says, look, when I said it in 1940, I was only articulating the sentiment of the people of our country. Nobody wanted it, which is a fact. Including Muslims in this country, majority Muslims, nobody wanted partition. Then he says, when I am today accepting it, I am again accepting it because nobody is ready to fight for it. Nobody is ready to come onto the streets, fight with those forces which are creating havoc in the country for securing partition. Today, people are not ready to fight it out, not ready to shed the blood, not ready to struggle for the unity of the country. So what can I do? I have to accept. The leaders have become old. So the second important lesson is, for the country's unity, if it calls for utmost sacrifice, paramount sacrifice, nation should be prepared. And in that, don't leave everything on leaders alone. A vigilant nation, a vigilant society is of paramount importance. Here, before I end, I must mention Subhash Chandra Bose's relevance here. When today you find his statue standing on the Rajpath, on the Kartavya Path, I have to change, we all have to change our habit. On the Kartavya Path today, it gives us that message. Recall what he said in 1942 in a famous speech in Burma. Give me your blood, I will give you freedom. Freedom doesn't come cheap. Country's unity, integrity is not a cheap thing. You cannot do deals on that. You cannot do bargaining on that, which we used to do in Kashmir or elsewhere, or in cases like PFI. We make compromises. We give certificates to them. Country's unity, integrity is not achieved like that. Subhash Bose becomes relevant because he told us that be prepared for ultimate sacrifices to keep the country united, one and strong. Friends, this book is about these three stories. Story of two partitions, story of two leaders, and story of two important lessons that we should learn. Rest, please read and let me know if you like it. Thank you.